My name is Kate. Welcome to our Sunday morning class with Guy Finley here at Life of Learning Foundation in Southern Oregon. We're glad that you could join us today. Welcome to our in-person audience and also welcome to our online audience. We are broadcasting out into the world via GoToWebinar and Facebook and YouTube, and we're glad that you joined us today. If you're new to class, if you haven't joined us before, the format is that in just a moment, Guy is going to come on and he's going to give about an hour-long talk. We'll take a short break and then we'll come back for a second part of class, which is an open Q&A discussion time with all of you. So that will be a time that you can actually participate. For those here in person, you'll be able to come up to the mic and speak and share what you've learned or ask questions. And for those online, you can, if you're on GoToWebinar, you'll be able to participate by unmuting yourself and talking to Guy directly, or you can always contact us in the chat area with sending comments. So we hope that you'll join in that discussion and stay with us through the whole class today. So we'll run for about 2 hours until about 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, and we will have this class is being recorded. There will be a replay, and you'll hear more about that later. For our online audience, if you have any tech issues, feel free to, again, reach out in the chat area there or the question box and GoToWebinar, and I'll be behind the scenes and can help you out as best I can. And I think we're ready to get started with cell phones. Okay, sorry. For anyone in the room, if you have a cell phone, could you please go ahead and turn that off or put it on silent mode? Thanks, Terry.
Put your mind on silent too, please.
Yeah, that's probably noisier, isn't it? All right, we're ready to get started with class. Guy, would you like me to read the key lesson today?
No, you read topic and key lesson, please.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go. The topic for today, I love this. Uncover the secret treasure hidden between every rock and a hard place. And here's the key lesson. Never run from any moment you don't understand, as whatever your conflict may be in that moment with life, it will be waiting for you when and wherever you come to a stop. All right, handing it over to you, Guy.
Nice deep breath, everybody. Good morning. Good morning to everyone out there, wherever you are in the world, whatever day or time you're taking this in. Always glad that you're able to join us for these times of study. So just to set the stage in a preliminary way, how many of you ever find yourself between a rock and a hard place? I have some opening comments that I need to set the stage so that what we're going to look at together can have meaning beyond the usual, oh, I know that, or I got that, or, what is he talking about? You really can't count the number of times, can you, where suddenly the proverbial rock in a hard place shows you that you think you've gotten beyond that person, that part of yourself, that predicament. You're sure you've gotten past that, and then lo and behold, you aren't beyond that at all. And that not only are you not beyond that, but upon its reappearance in your life, and you may fill in whatever that is, we all have individual instances of that, return of an anger, a fear, a frustration. Not only are we not beyond that, but the appearance anew is overwhelming. How can that be? And so then you sit and fight inwardly, get into all these conversations with yourself, make excuses, trying to figure out how it is that you didn't get beyond that. That's what we're going to look at today. We've been speaking actually for the last, I don't know how many classes. I'm thinking now I might make a special project out of it. We asked at some point last week before, what's beyond fear? We don't know what's beyond fear. Fear for us is a round trip by desiring a new condition to escape the conflict in it, so that we just come back to the fear again. What's beyond anger? Don't know. I became a new Jew, a new Christian, a new Muslim. I did this, I did that. And for a while, I was a new human being, free of anger, because I had fallen in love with the idea of being someone who couldn't be taken over. And then someone says the smallest thing, and I'm ready to off with their head. Talk about loving. And there isn't one true tradition on this planet that doesn't address the idea and ask not just what's beyond anger, or not just what's beyond fear or doubt. What's beyond death? And do I have to live my entire life fearing those moments where I find out I didn't go beyond whatever it was that I thought I went beyond, and then suddenly feel like I'm dying because I'm returned to the same place that I thought I escaped to begin with? Everybody tracking me? So I want to put it into some kind of context before we get into this material, which is, I hope that you'll listen. I don't present solutions. That's not my job. My job is to help you see where it is that you are complicit with the continuation of a suffering that you don't understand at all. And that until you actually enter into the suffering, you can't go beyond it. You go beyond something by going into it and exiting it with new understanding. Till you do that, you've done nothing at all. It's all an illusion. So I was thinking about a goldfish. Do you know how to make a goldfish face? Very good, Debbie. Come and show people how to do that. So imagine a goldfish sitting in a nice large tank. Got that seaweed stuff floating up. There's little bubbles over here, a little diver off to the left, a treasure chest that opens every once in a while and closes. And for a long time, that little goldfish, by whatever your name is, swims around in that tank. And then one day, however it happens, the little goldfish bumps into the glass. What's that? What's that? Wait, who's that out? What is that outside? What is that outside the glass? With this little goldfish bubble eyes. And it looks out past the glass. Now, can that goldfish know what's outside the glass? It's impossible. Why? It's a goldfish. It was born in a world. It will live in that world. It'll circle the treasure chest, hoping it opens at the right time so it can steal a little pearl of some kind of fish food out of it. And it'll die in the tank. It'll die in a world that it never knew it lived in, but that in some instances, God forbid that a goldfish should actually have this experience, it might have realized there was something outside that tank. But let's assume for a moment that the goldfish could actually get outside the tank, that it was interested enough to jump out. You've seen that. Was that little Nemo or whatever it was, Yeah. Can the goldfish live outside the tank? So if the goldfish could, in fact, escape the tank and the glass that separates it from one world into another, it would need a new body. That's what all true teachings are about. About the awakening to the limitation of living in a glass tank, bumping into the sides of it, circling the treasure. And in the very realization of being stuck in a tank, unable to go beyond the anger, the fear, the worry, beyond the interpersonal relationships that are always staggering when anybody doesn't do as you assume they should. In order to go beyond that world that we live in, we too need a new body. call it what you want, rebirth. I don't give a hang how you name it. In fact, naming it is part of the old body. Any ideology, any belief system, any of that, no matter how profound or religious one may believe they are, religion separates a human being from the very thing that they long to connect to. And in this instance, the connection that we long for is to have a relationship with something that can look and see, I'm stuck behind a piece of glass here. I cannot go beyond this moment because I'm wrapped up in some kind of negative state. I'm caught up in a fear or a worry or a doubt. I'm busy thinking to myself I'm getting old, or whatever it may be that a human being is always occupied with, thinking about their world and their life, all the time living in a little tank of conditioned thoughts and feelings and never suspecting it's true. And then you might say, God help them and God bless them at the same time. A person suddenly wakes up and realizes, I'm caught. I never knew I was caught. And that moment that a man or a woman finally not only sees that there is something beyond themselves, beyond this world, you wouldn't be listening to these talks. You wouldn't come to them. You wouldn't be interested in a spiritual life, to use those words. And what is a spiritual life? It is a description of the possibility of a human being transcending the body in which they live in this world. And this body is not just the body. You live in a body of thoughts, of conditioned reactions, a body of desires, which is going to be our discussion today. And it is that body of desires that meets every single moment, knowing what it is that it wants and what it doesn't want. And it always runs into a moment that affirms or denies, and when it does, it's back in the tank, and that's the end of it. Because now it knows what to fight with, or it knows what to go get out of the little treasure box at the bottom of this fish tank. Do I need to make that any clearer? How does a person come to this new body? That's what we're looking at. How do I go beyond this body of thought, of feeling, of desire? Because until I actually become aware of the limitation inherent in it, which is our talk. One of the reasons people don't like, I say don't like Guy, but it's not Guy they don't like, or they maybe don't like Guy. like I care, is because I don't want to know about limitation. I want to know about affirmation of how great I am. I want you to tell me about my powers. I don't want you to point out, by the way, as Christ and every true teacher on this planet ever did, that it's in my powerless that I find strength. I just want to be confirmed as I imagine myself. I don't want you to shake the foundation of my being, failing to see that if a thought or anybody can shake the foundation of your being, you have no being. Because being can't be shaken. It can be stirred. So let's get into it. Take a nice deep breath. Christine is going to see the good doctor. For those of you who don't know, I use certain stories, not the same story every time, but characters and relationships to explore angles, facets of possibilities in terms of awakening. So Christine is our local heroine in the story, and she represents the possibility of wisdom. And the good doctor that she goes to see is the embodiment of the wisdom that she will awaken to gradually in herself through her relationship with the wisdom that already exists. That's the whole point, isn't it? Student and teacher exist in the same body. All that I'm created to be is already involved and designed in what I am presently and yet don't know that needs to be transcended. She goes to him, says, "What's going on?" She says, "Well, you know the old expression, darned if you do and darned if you don't?" I said, "Of course I do." She said, I don't really have a problem, although my stomach's upset quite lately. But I have this issue, and I don't know what to do about it. what are you talking about? She said, well, this is just one example. By the way, if I have time, I'm going to get you to bring examples in. And if I don't, certainly I'm going to ask you to work on them when the talk is done so you can bring the material home. She says, I never knew I was like this. I guess I want the approval of my family so badly that I'll do almost anything to win it. I'll agree to do things that I don't want to do, that I know I ought not do. I'll agree to do it. I'll be sitting there and I'll be shaking my head yes, while inwardly something is telling me, don't do that, you're destroying them. And I do it anyway. Now you fill in the blank. You do that with people all the time. You do it with yourself, always making deals. Said, so I know I'm enabling them. And I know that when I do that, I'm enabling myself. And for the life of me, I know it's not good for them. I know it's not good for me. And yet, then I do it. Then I judge them. Then I resent myself. Following me? She says, that's a real no-win situation, isn't it? So I guess if you were going to name one, that would be it. Can you help me? He said, well, actually, I can. He said, and I know how much you love the acronyms that I come up with to describe the syndrome that you have. So I'll just tell you briefly what the syndrome is, since we know it's not a physical one, then we'll go into it. She said, well, what's going on? You ready? He said, you have S-BA-ROP.
Oh, no, not
You have S-BA-ROP syndrome. That's, yeah. S-B-A-R-A-A-H-P, S-BA-ROP. She said, what in the name of God is S-BA-ROP syndrome? Get ready to write it down. Stuck between a rock and a hard place. Stuck behind a rock and a hard place. She said, I kind of understand. Isn't that the problem for most of us? I kind of understand. Sweet God, won't you do your work? Why do you keep giving yourself to a world that in the end can do nothing but take you from it? She said, I don't understand, but I want to. He said, all right. He said, you know what? Let me show you a picture. And so he said, and he brought out a picture to show Christine to help her understand what, no, that's. What did I ask, Heidi? Picture number 1. Do you ever feel like that? What does that represent? Stuck between a rock and a hard place, yeah? But what has that got to do with the fact that I can't go beyond? That I'm still enabling, that I'm still lying, I'm still cheating, I'm still dramatizing, I'm still involved in everybody's life in some incredibly wrong way, still trying to fix people? What has that got to do with being stuck between a rock and a hard place, as this picture shows? This person is pushing on both sides at the same time, aren't they? Leave that up until I ask it to be taken down. Now, we've studied enough here, and I'm not going to go into it. I hope that you are facile enough to at least understand it. If not, I'll explain it briefly through the talk. We know the Zen koan, that if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? We've heard that, we've talked about it, and we've understood to some degree, of course, in order for there to be a sound, there has to be a set of ears. No ears, no sound. No sound without ears. So ears and sound are something that are mutually dependent. One does not exist without the other. That's what this mutual dependency that's at the root of Buddhist teachings represents. That nothing exists by itself. There is no self without relationship. Relationship is always between the opposites, and the opposites are always intended to bring together something that can't be understood without realizing they've been married that way. So what comes first, the sound or the ears? They don't come first. They don't exist without each other, do they? Do you see it? Take a nice deep breath. You might want to write it down. What comes first, the rock or the hard place? It's the last thing a human being wants to know. There is no hard place that I'm in without a rock, without something that I think is coming at me, without what you've said or done or didn't do, without the world and its body insane of politic and religion and all the rest of its nonsense, all the little pebbles and seaweed that sits at the bottom of a tank that's just reorganized and refurbished, so that the things that are swimming around in it never suspect that their new experience has nothing to do with anything really new, just the reorganization of its own thought patterns. What comes first, the rock or the hard place? And then I understand they exist each other. And if I actually understand that neither exist, you can sense that. I'm going to show it to you, okay? You can sense that, right? If there's no sound without ears, no ears without sound, mutual dependency across the board, no self without relationship, then there is no rock without a hard place, no hard place without a rock. You can at least sense that, because I'll get into it. Yes? Then what does that mean? It means that who and what I am right now is the rock and the hard place at the same time. At the same time. And I have no interest in knowing that, because you see, I need to fix the rocks that are coming at me, and I need to turn them into gold. Or I need to repel them. I need to get rid of what you look at me with those eyes. I need to change something that I see as something that is coming and destroying my peace, taking from me my happiness. But does the rock that seems to threaten my peace exist without a hard place? Does the rock exist without a hard place? Do you understand? In other words, can that which threatened me exist without that which is threatened within me? Can't. They're the same thing. That which threatens me does not exist apart from what's threatened by it. And that hard place, that place of ultimate constant resistance to anything that doesn't agree with what it wants, is a hard place that by its existence, by its conditioned demands. How many of you know you have that you have demands? But I don't walk around thinking I have demands. Do you think you walk around having a demand that the weather should be like this? Do you wake up thinking that demand? Or do you look out and see something and then you interpret what you see and it falls on the hard place inside of you, doesn't it? And the hard place is that which doesn't want anything other than what it wants. That's what the hard place is. Yes or no? It is incomprehensible to the mind that is this world, to the consciousness that has created this world, not nature in her beauty and her reconciliation, but the world of human beings. It is incomprehensible to the consciousness that has created this world of war and what it calls peace, that somehow or other it is responsible for every moment that it doesn't want and every negative reaction it has to it. It is, to us, it is unbelievable that somehow or other I go before myself to make sure that when I get someplace I don't want to be, I'll have a negative reaction to it. Because if that's true, what am I doing? Because what do I do all day long when I run into a rock and it hits the hard place? The hard place says, well, that's no problem. We'll just have another place. We'll just invent a new place. We'll come up with a new identity. We'll be someone else to be, somewhere else to go, some new plan. I'll do something. Because then once I escape the rock, then I'll be happy again. You following the metaphor? How many of you have escaped avalanches? And it's clear I haven't escaped anything. Because this consciousness can't escape itself. That's all it does all day long, is try to escape itself. What do you think every thought is? The fox blames the trap, said Blake. My mind never stops talking. And what's it talking about? Rocks and hard places. Who it doesn't want to be because of what happened, or who it needs to be because of what should happen. Now, there's ample evidence of this. The teachings through time. Buddha's Four Noble Truths. Ever so briefly, nobody likes it. Buddha says this life is suffering. Well, the heck you say, this life is suffering. I'm fashioning a life that doesn't suffer. Really? Or are you fashioning a hard place that's able to keep most of the rocks outside the cage? And that inevitably slips in someone or something into your perfect little kingdom, made in your own image. Boom, there's the hard place. I'll get off with their head. They're off the list. Yeah, they're off the list. I don't need to be bothered with you. And that's what most people call power, is justifying negativity. Think of that for a moment. The power of being able to justify a negative reaction. Is that power, or are you under the power of a consciousness that explains to itself why it is like it is? You know the answer to it. Buddha said, suffering is inevitable. Why? Because human beings, they get attached to stuff. Felt like Jimmy Durante for a moment. Most of you don't know who that was, but when you're 74 years old, you know who Jimmy Durante was. I get attached to stuff. Now you say, well, what's wrong with attachments? Attachments make hard spots, don't they? So he said, without attachment and the dependency, there wouldn't be all the pain when conditions change. So that if you ever want to be free of that suffering, you're going to have to somehow or other transcend this body, this world, this consciousness that is the actual embodiment of desire. That's what this consciousness is. It lives for desire, by desire, and through desire. That's what this present consciousness is. That's what all the thoughts are about, is trying to enter into, establish, or otherwise gain access to a world that this mind says, when I finally get the kingdom in place, then I'll be content. So there he is talking about this, essentially, an insatiable sense of self. Because attachment gives rise to dependency. Dependency gives rise to conflict with anything that threatens it. And when the threat comes, then I simply come up with a new thing to be attached to. And that's called reincarnation, isn't it? Christ said the same thing, only in different words. He said, you can't serve two masters. You will love one and despise the other. That is exactly what Buddha was saying. How can we know that's true? Because what do you think the two masters are that you will love one and despise the other? The two masters are this body, this consciousness of desire. That's the two masters. And those two masters, simply put, in this consciousness are divided up into want and not want. That's it. Because that's all this consciousness knows to meet life with. Everything is measured according to, I want that, I don't want that. And when I don't want that, it's very obvious what I do need. So that consciousness is forever identifying with a situation, something falls on the hard place. And what's the hard place? How many of you understand you have a hard place in you? What's the hard place? It's instantaneously, I don't want that. I don't want you to be like that. I don't want the world to be this way. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to get old. I don't want to. Is that not a hard place? But do you walk around thinking that you're a hard place? Do you? No, you don't. What you walk around thinking about is how to make sure that whatever it is that's happened that reveals to you and brings up this resistance, isn't resistance a hard place? Is how do I get to a place where I don't have to resist anything anymore? How you doing with that, by the way? It's like a joke, but not to us. Because at the drop of a hat, I can instantaneously come up with something that I love. I know what I want. Have you ever had a moment you didn't want, that your mind didn't chew on that for a while and then spit out what you do want so you don't have to go through what you don't want again? Yes or no? I'm going to get that bum out of my life and find a new bum. That's right. Don't you laugh at it like you're above it. You're so anxious in this world to find a goldfish to swim with. So you won't be alone, because you don't want to be alone, because you've been convinced by a world, however it's taken place, that by conditioning that somehow or other, if I'm alone, it means that I've missed out on life. No, where you miss out on life is believing in the conditioning that you didn't even give yourself, and that sets all the parameters for all the choices you make in this world. Including that I got to be rich, I've got to do this, I've got to go there, I can't sit still. We talked about that. Why can't I sit still? Why can't I sit still? Because I can't stand being myself. End of story. Too much pressure. Well, what's the pressure? Bring up the next image, please. There's the pressure. Trying to hold off one place while I'm trying to hold off the other. Trying to hold off, talk about a rock and a hard place. Fear of growing old. I have a number of examples that I'm going to go through with you. This instantaneous relationship that we have, where in one way or another, it seems like I'm sitting at home. You ever sat at home kind of minding your P's and Q's? What the heck does that mean? I know what P's are, but I've never had a Q. No. And along came the spider. Along comes a thought. I'm not having a problem with anything. Along comes a thought. Or I'm sitting at home and I have a sudden ache. I wake up in the middle of the night and there's a pain I don't recognize. What happens? Oh my God. What does this mean? Now what's going to happen? And all that happened was you rolled over incorrectly. Why is there instantaneous resistance to something like that? And what is it that I have instantaneous resistance to? What is the nature of the instantaneous resistance? It is a hard place in me, isn't it? Something that doesn't want anything that doesn't align with what it imagines itself being. That's the hard place. Something that goes against everything that I believe is true. Why do you think people fight? You know why people fight in fish tanks? Because they live in a world where there's limited resources and all they can do, and all they get sick and tired of seeing each other. And so they fight, they bicker. Well, that instantaneous resistance belongs to something conditioned in me that's convinced, without me even knowing it, that this shouldn't be that way. And then you are, or they do, and now you've got stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now, can that man, if you've not climbed, he's actually climbing that way. That's the way you go up a space like that. But you can see, can't you? It's like he's trying to keep these rocks from coming together, doesn't it? So this hard place is really this conditioned nature of ours that has already determined what the content of any given moment should be. A couple examples. You might want to write them down, and hopefully if I have time, we'll get into some others. Here are some examples of being between a rock and a hard place, okay? See if this applies to you. This especially some of you out there who ask the same questions. There's a person who really irritates me. Any of you have someone who really irritates you that you just have to, someone can say their name? Like Chris's dog. No, she had a dog and her name was Sophie? No, Collie. She had a dog named Collie. And she met back in the day, our dog Tessie, who was a Rottweiler. Tessie loved little Collie, but Collie, a little dog, Tessie, Rottweiler, Tessie comes running up, Collie runs and hides under a deal. From that day on, all you had to say around that dog was, "Where's Tessie?" And she'd go, she'd start barking. Just like that. That's all that it took to say the word Tessie, like that. And it was terrible because we thought it was funny. We had to put the dog in a psychiatric institute along with its owner. But so here's an example. I just hear that person's name. I see them. Yes or no? So here's somebody, and they set me off. They don't have to really do anything. I just have to hear their name. But usually they will do something because that's how they are. Yes or no? That's just the way they are. Now, is that person really just that way? Maybe they are, but what does that have to do with your life? So they set me off. We're talking about rock in a hard place. So I've decided that I have to finally fix them. How many of you have tried to fix people? Does that work? So I start thinking about how to talk to them, to be the right person, have the right attitude, speak with proper dialect, make sure everything is exactly the way it needs to be. Now, why am I, by the way, doing all of that? I'm already in a hard place because I want to be seen in a certain way by this person. And I want the outcome that I want. But I know, and that's why I'm practicing, that I'm afraid I'll lose it. Because I also know that in spite of how practiced I am at being pretty, there's something ugly that waits underneath all this prettiness, and given the right impetus, it's going to pop out. This is why human beings don't talk to each other, by the way, and why you see in the world today, nobody can talk to anybody anymore because the resentment and the force of these unresolved opposites have reached a pitching point that person cannot bear to do anything but let out the pain. Can't talk, got to try to push. So here I am. I'm afraid that I'm going to lose it, and I'm even afraid that you're going to lose it. Because I might lose it, I might not lose it, but if you lose it, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to lose it. So I'm a pressure pot. I'm going into the conversation to try to fix you, and I'm broken. But I don't know I'm broken because all I see is the imagined peace I'll have when I finally get you to toe the line. And the amazing thing is, this is the rock in the hard place, that underneath all of this is that I don't even care really about this person that I need to correct because they've irritated me so much, but I want them to like me for fixing them. Rock in a hard place, isn't it? How about this one? I call this the carrots for cookies syndrome. Carrots for cookies. I want the second helping. I want to eat. I want to eat. And by the way, the reason I want to eat is at least it gives me something to do with my attention that's pleasurable instead of being with who I am that's always hungry for anything to distract itself from the pain of these unresolved opposites in me. I want the second helping. I want to eat whatever the heck I want to eat. I don't want just 2 cookies. Let's be honest. I want to eat cookies until I can't eat cookies anymore. And then I don't want to have any problems with eating cookies. But I get sick every time I eat this stuff, or I have the second helping, I overeat, then I have indigestion. So I'm sitting there, I'm looking at the pleasure, and I'm already in pain. But I don't know I'm already in pain because all I see is what I want in that moment, not what the other part of me doesn't want that says, let's eat carrots for 3 years now that we've overeaten. Do you see it with me or not? Yes. The conflict is that this consciousness wants and doesn't want at the same time. That's the conflict. Can you think of other examples? I want you to work on it. What about rushing? I'm sitting someplace, suddenly I feel like I've got to get someplace in a hurry. I'm anxious. I gotta go. Now, why do I gotta go? Is it because I'm happy where I am? Well, I have to get someplace important. And why do I have to get someplace important? So I can be important. So I can get what I want in the moment. So at the same moment that I want to get there, I don't want to be where I am. If I'm going someplace, why do I have to rush? Why do I have to rush if I'm going someplace? Because that sense of self that is produced by the pressure between want and not want is all we know. We essentially do not know ourselves outside of the desires we have, and desire is want and not want at the same time. I want to get there because that's where the pleasure is going to be. I want to get there because then I'm going to be able to relax when I finally get there. Well, am I relaxed on the way there? Am I? No, I'm pressurized. Why? Because I want to be relaxed. Please try to see it. I'm pressurized because I want to be relaxed. Is that not a rock and a hard place? Can you say crazy? No, really, honest to God. And I have no idea that I live in that world. That is a world, by the way. That literally is a world. That is a level of being. My Father's kingdom has many mansions. This is one of the mansions in that kingdom. And by the way, just so you know, it's actually beneath this world. Not even equal with it. Trying to keep something in place. Now, there's other examples of this. Let's bring up the next image. How about this for a rock and a hard place? I want to keep something in place. Take a good look. Whatever the relationship is, the power, the possession, I've done all this to get my life in the way it is. And I'm not actually happy, really happy with the way my life is. I'm kind of happy with it, and I just have to make a few more improvements. Each improvement, the basis of a desire, each desire with want and not want. So all I'm doing is swimming around in the fish tank. But from time to time, it's quite clear to me that I'm going to have to try to keep both worlds going at the same time. But I don't think to myself I'm doing that. But you look at this man, what's he doing? Got hands in one world, feet in another. I remember this in my own life. I've talked about it. I thought one day when I did become successful in the music business, writing, I thought this was it. I lived to become a successful composer. And then I did become a successful composer, and the next thing I know, I'm composing by under the contract that says if I don't compose, in quotes, I'll lose the house that I just bought. So now in order to keep my liberty, I have to be a slave. In order to be who I imagine myself being, I have to keep the world that I imagined into existence in place. Do you see it or not? Caught, stretched out, wanting. How many of you are peacemakers? Come on, you know what a peacemaker is. I'm a peacemaker. You're not a peacemaker. You're a person living from a piece of you that feels if you can't get everybody to be the way you want them to be, then you're not going to be who you need to be and you're going to be unhappy. So I got to get everybody straightened out. Fix everybody. And why do I have to fix people? Because I come unglued when they're not. When things aren't the way I want them, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Take that last diagram down. I showed you 3 images. Try to give you an emotional, pictorial experience of what it is that we're looking at. Now, take a deep breath. I've got a full 10 minutes to try to bring you into something that nobody wants to be brought into. Does a goldfish know that it only has goldfish thoughts? That it's looking up at the surface of the water, hoping something will drop on it that it can feed by? If you don't know goldfish, they get used to you walking over. They see you walking over, and they start looking up because they know you're going to sprinkle the top of the tank with their goldfish food. And then it's a dart to the top to get the food, and the slower ones wait at the bottom, who don't exercise. They wait for the food to drop down where they are. I'm not going to swim. Why do I have to swim? If I just open my mouth, it'll get there. You think I'm talking about goldfish? Why do you think the world is the way it is? Everybody believing that somebody owes them something. Because that's part of this consciousness. But let's, for instance, just for a moment, as best we can, use our own experience. You sit at home in the morning. What is your mind doing? What is your mind doing? But Chris said it's trying to figure something out. What's it trying to figure out? What's the mind always working on? How to get what it wants and to get away from what it doesn't. The entire structure of thought, a product of an unconscious nature, forever imagining what it needs to be whole and running from that which threatens it. The entire structure. Is there freedom in that? I have the sense of freedom when I have a new plan. My mind envisions going here and getting that and finally getting this done. And boy, when I lose this weight, when I get there, woohoo! And where did I get to? I made a lap in the tank. I made a lap in the tank. Now, I don't know how much you're able to see yourself as I'm explaining this to you, but I guarantee you you're not going, this is great. The only body I know is that body. I meet everyone through it. I involve myself in relationships by it. I try to change everything I can with it, and what I can't change, I'll avoid, and I'll judge and I'll blame. And that's human consciousness. It's not even human consciousness, to tell you the truth. We're aspiring to have a human consciousness. Now, if I knew, which is the point of this work, that here I am, and I look at you, or I'm with a group of people, or I'm driving down the street, and suddenly a rock looks like it's coming at my windshield. You understand the rock? Can what I don't want coming at me exist without the hard place that actually creates the rock? This is important. The hard place creates the rocks. The conditioning, the demand, the expectation actually creates the rocks. So that consciousness, without knowing it, isn't separate from what threatens it. It creates a nature that is always threatened by anything that doesn't confirm what it wants. What happens to a mind that not only recognizes the tank, the glass wall, but actually starts to understand, I cannot see beyond this consciousness, and yet I do know for a fact, because I can describe to myself, I understand that something beyond this body exists. I know it. And I know it because now I can see with greater clarity this consciousness that I am. So now let's take you through it. This is why I said I want you as your exercise. I want you to come up with something, and each of us has very distinct, I might add, seemingly distinct. They're all the same. If we had time on a Wednesday night, we'd go through it. Everybody shares the same rock and hard place because it's the same consciousness. You look at your finances. You look at your health, you look at your relationships. Everything is always compared. What is comparison? How can the consciousness compare something unless it has some measure by which it compares what is good and what is not? So-called knowledge of good and evil, the fall. All of that connected to a consciousness that we have indeed, not so much fallen into, but that has become our existence, and that until we understand it, every moment that comes where I'm suddenly full of resistance, what's the first thing that I do when I'm full of resistance? Do I think to myself, you know what, I'm in a hard place? Or do I think to myself, the place I'm in is because of the rock, and I just need to change whoever threw it? Isn't that the mindset? I'm looking at my life 2 years down the stream. Oh my God, what's going to happen? I better prepare. I'm punishing myself. And am I punishing myself, or is a consciousness that has decided that what it imagines is true, and then it resists its own imagination and then tries to escape the content of its own dream? Isn't that what it is? The rock and the hard place. Imagining, interpreting a moment, giving the moment its meaning, and the minute I give the moment the meaning, it becomes the rock, and the rock doesn't exist without what defined it. What if that's true? And I say to you as a question, because you don't know that yet. If you knew it, then every time you started to have a reaction, instead of participating in the consciousness responsible for it, you would instantaneously enter into a new body of understanding that recognizes there's nothing for me to do other than to watch this. Because anything apart from being the witness of that consciousness is participating in its activity. Do you understand that? Anything other than witnessing this unconscious duality, this divided mind, anything outside of witnessing it, because that's all you're capable, even were you capable at this point, and that's all I can do. And by the way, and I can't stand that. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to worry about the future. I don't want to regret the past. I don't want to have a problem with people. I want to be perfect according to Hoyle. It's another name nobody in our generation knows. And anything that's not what I want it to be is suffering. When the only reason I'm suffering is because I'm identified with what I want it to be. So let's say I see that. This is where I have to leave you, in a way. I've never suffered without knowing why and without knowing what to do about it. I have never suffered without knowing why, and in knowing why, what to do about it. That is the summation of human suffering on this planet. You're like this, they're like that, this happened, it shouldn't have. I've never suffered without my mind telling me why I'm suffering, and then as it describes to me why I'm suffering, because I wouldn't, how many would say, I wouldn't be suffering if you weren't the way that you are? Yes or no? I wouldn't be suffering if I didn't listen to the news, and I can't wait to turn it on, by the way. And when I know why I'm suffering, I'm filled with indignation. I'm sure what I have to do, and I'm sure what you need to be, and I'm pretty clear on the whole thing. And the more clear I become on what's wrong, the more the hard place gets hard. And I've never known what to do with suffering other than to allow the consciousness that produces it to tell me how to free myself from it. And now I know better. And now I know better. And this is where everything that you're learning comes into play, assuming you're learning. When I'm caught in that suffering, And I'm never usually, actually, I'm always caught in that suffering. If you can understand the big picture, what Buddha was talking about, Christ talking about, you can't serve two masters, this consciousness, this desire, forever divided into want and not want. It is an illusion that you escape that consciousness when, by illusion, it comes up with a plan to escape itself. It's an illusion. You don't escape anything. You're just on the other side of the tank for a moment where there's some new seaweed or something like that. That's all. You don't escape anything. Do you see how hard? Look, do you understand how important it is? I'm not asking you to understand. I'm not saying do you like it. I'm saying, but can you understand how important it is to understand this?
Yes.
My mind at this level, this unconscious nature, doesn't know anything outside of it. But by the grace of God, there is something outside of it that knows everything about it. And that which knows everything about what is unaware of itself does so through an awareness of a consciousness that has no awareness of itself. And to see and understand that means that when that moment comes, and I have to bring the talk to a close now, I can recognize this is the basarap, stuck between a rock and a hard place. See, you don't know when you are because you're too busy imagining how to get out. Never dreaming that everything I do to get out from the rock and the hard place is actually the consciousness that's producing the rock and hard place I'm trying to escape. It never even dawns on me that that consciousness is reincarnating itself and using my physical existence as its instrument. Never even occurs to me. And then one day, as the teachings are intended to do, a person suddenly wakes up and realizes, you know what? The experience I have of any given moment can't be different than the consciousness it's reflected in. It's impossible. I'm experiencing my consciousness. But my consciousness that I'm experiencing is adept at suddenly presenting something new to identify with, because that's what this consciousness is, identifying with want and not want. That's all it knows. And I just hand myself over endlessly until I see something with great clarity. And then begins for the first time in a person's life what might be called voluntary suffering, the sacrifice of oneself. Because I'm fully in this world. I can dream myself not to be and all that nonsense which human beings just love, because it's so satisfying to think of myself as a deeply spiritual person. Spiritual men and women are aware of their suffering, not trying to escape it. And the suffering they're aware of, they no longer say I to. They see it as belonging to something that they have been identified with. They see it as a seed process. They see it as the necessity of the wheat being separated from the chaff. So when the moment comes and suddenly, how many of you suspect there'll be a rock in a hard place if you're not already sitting in one while I'm talking? What do I always do in the moment when I find myself feeling? What do I do? What's the first thing I always do? I try to escape it. And I escape it by using the same consciousness that's created it. If that happens to me, what am I left with? I understand the existing relationship I have with the moment is never going to change the experience of the moment. The existing relationship I have with the moment is never going to change the way I experience the moment, no matter how many different experiences it promises me if I just do what it says. So I need an entirely new relationship with the moment where that consciousness meets itself. An entirely new relationship with the moment where this consciousness, for that split second, meets itself. And what would that look like? Try to see it. I'd have her put the image back up, but it's not, I don't want to wait. You got it? Great pressure there, isn't there? But does the pressure of what I believe is pushing in exist without me pushing out? So the great pressure can't be separated from me trying to not have it, not go through it, yes or no? So in that great pressure, we can understand in this consciousness, in its divided state, is producing by its very activity something that is trying, as it understands to do, to get that pressure released. Wants to release the pressure. That's what we call pleasure. I mean, for the most part, when we're suffering, we don't think to ourselves, how do I learn more about this? How do I learn about how to escape it into the pleasure I imagine waits for me when I finally become liberated? No, the task is to allow that consciousness to fully express itself, with you observing it as best you can and allowing, and this is the difficult part, you'll have to find it for yourself, letting those opposing forces, instead of allowing them to fling off and produce the next rock and the next hard place, let them be so together that this peak resistance to the moment is met. A peak resistance where I can't take it anymore. Please try to see this with me. I can't take the pain anymore. The pain of what? The pain of what? Of what I don't want or what I do want. The pain of desire, period. The two masters that I've always served one and despised the other. Instead of letting them run their game, you're aware of their activity and you let them meet, and that reaches a certain point of resistance. Listen to me. And when it reaches that certain point of resistance, you will have nothing to do other than to die to yourself. That's it. Because there is nothing else to do. You have no place to go because you've understood through that awareness that anything that seems to be outside of want and not want belongs to want and not want. Anything that seems to be outside of want and not want belongs to want and not want. And I've understood now. This is what's so hard. I can't, you say to yourself, I want God, I want Christ, I want love, I want truth in my life. You don't know what those things are. You know what they've imagined, you've imagined them to be. That's all you know. That's all any of us know. And it is the very God I've imagined and the context of it, the Christ, the loving nature, the very imagination of it as my Savior puts me into a hard place anytime anyone or anything challenges what I believe is there to save me. And then I call on the image again. Thou shalt have no graven images. What do you think that was about? Have no image, because to have an image is to find consolation in it, and in the consolation the attachment and the dependency, and in that the sense of self born of desire. That consciousness behind the wall of thought, the consciousness behind the desire, when it sees itself completely there, is transported beyond it, but it doesn't know what it's being transported into. It only knows the end of itself. That's all it knows. And that's what must happen before you can find out what is beyond it. Because what you find out is beyond it is that it was never what you thought it was. That's what you find out. That it wasn't what you thought it was, and you weren't who you thought you were in that moment of not wanting it. And then suddenly there's an enlightenment. Suddenly there's a release, a liberation. But not before you go through dying. Not before you go through dying. And the way that you can know there is a God, call it what you will, a supreme love. The way you know there is a divinity is that you can't do that to yourself, and you wouldn't. But something will take you there and show you the necessity of it. And if you're awake and aware and willing to allow what the truth is trying to show you about this goldfish, about this tank, about this life, you let all of that do that, and you sit there, you don't let it off. You don't let it off. I'm going to talk about justified negativity. You know what justified negativity is? It's the safety relief valve for the false self. Isn't it? Next thing. Oh, that's exciting, because that'll be a lot better than where I am. And guess what goes out? That's the fish tank losing the water. Did you catch something? Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the second part of our class. We are going to get going with an open discussion with all of you here in just a moment. Before we do that, and while you all get settled, I just wanted to give a couple of quick announcements. First of all, today's class is being recorded and it will go up on our GoToWebinar channel a couple of hours after class ends. You can go to guyfinley.org/channel and get the replays for all of our ongoing classes, actually. So you'll find all of them there, but that's where you'll go to find this class. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, it automatically gets archived on those platforms as well. So you can always go look for the replays there. Let's see, if you would like to support this work that we're doing, if you are inspired by Guy's work, feel like it's important to help us get it out there into the world, you can do that in a couple of different ways. If you go to our website at guyfinley.org/donate, you'll see where you can make a one-time donation or become a monthly donor. You scroll down and you can see some other ways that you can support the work that don't cost you a penny. But if you do make a donation of $10 or more, right now we have a special promotion that we're doing where with that donation, you receive something in return. So we have a very special album. It's actually a 3-talk package on the Beatitudes, and you see it there up on your screen. It's called The Beatitudes, A Roadmap to Self-Transformation. These are 3 of Guy's best talks on the Beatitudes that he's given over the years. Lots of testimonials for these. So if that's something that you might be interested in having for yourself, if you give a $10 donation, it will automatically be added to your cart and to your My Downloads area of our website. And that's just a really nice way for you to support this work and receive something in return that you can work with as well. You would go to guyfinley.org/beatitudes in order to, we actually have a page that describes the package a little bit more, and then the buttons for donating are right there. So guyfinley.org/beatitudes. And Eric also posted a link there in the chat box for our GoToWebinar folks. And just a reminder that all donations are tax deductible in the US. We are a 501c3. And everything that we receive from our donations and the proceeds, the sales from Guy's books, et cetera, all of that goes right back into doing this work. Guy himself does not take a penny in salary. And we have many volunteers. We're all working hard to just spread a little light out there. So this special will be going on through the end of the month, by the way. So just in case if you're not able to go do that now, you still will have through the end of the month. If you make a donation, you'll get that package. We're ready for our question and answer session, but I hear that Guy has a few remarks that he'd like to make first, so we'll bring him back on and get started with that. You ready, Guy?
Yes, thanks, Kate. When a man or a woman makes certain discoveries which are mandatory for their deliverance from one world into the next, most of those discoveries are not met with delight. Because what's discovered is that you're not who you thought you were. You don't own what you think you own. And by and large, that you have, as shocking as it is to that nature, that you've been deceived. Because you and I both know we're beyond being deceived, aren't we? Much sharper than that. So I thought for a moment, because I would really urge you to exercise as I've described, I thought I'd just ever so briefly help you understand it again. This consciousness is a rock and a hard place at once. For instance, it doesn't want to have enemies, but it makes them. It doesn't want to be angry, but it is. It wants to be happy for other people, but it's jealous. It has desires that are set against each other, but it doesn't know that it does. It wants to be a generous human being, but it's always weighing what it gives. It doesn't want to be selfish, but its first inclination is to think of itself first. That's the rock and the hard place. That's the tank, the thought nature we live in. I'm not making this up. I guarantee you that every teacher who ever understood and discovered what I'm describing to you, I guarantee you they didn't want to discover it, and I guarantee you they were the last one who wanted to tell others about it, because they have the same consciousness that wants people to like them. But they do what is true. You must do what is true, in spite of what it seems to cost you, and that's the point. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. When a person is walking through that shadowy place, they're experiencing what is being cast out in front of them is the end of themselves as they know themselves, and there's nowhere else to go. That's just the end. It isn't just the end. Nothing brings you to a point of revelation and the attending realization that hasn't already shown you, and in a manner of speaking, to use the word faith, shown you that it is possible to go beyond that place. What did Scrooge say? Why would you show me these things if there wasn't a reason for it? But you can't know the reason until you enter into the world where you see all that has been described. Work at home. Find the place for yourself. Where is it that I know this is a rock and a hard place for me? I don't want to be a lazy bum. I don't want to be a lazy person. But God, I love to sit down and do nothing. Find the place in your life and then stay in it when you get there. And Dana has come up to the microphone, almost running, which is exciting. I was hoping she would dance her way up there, but not yet.
Good morning. My name is Dana. Rock in a hard place. The first thing is, Dana, I'm getting a little convoluted here as far as how to present this, but to see as much as possible, but doesn't want to leave her chair. Rock in a hard place, right? But it's the same consciousness.
Yes.
That's just something small. So that's it.
Oh, good. There's no small discovery that's true. Patricia's up.
My name is Patricia. I saw myself doing exactly what this talk was about during the break, and that was complaining about something. And it was exactly what we do when we're disturbed. We let the pressure out, and it's water out of the fish tank. But how can we hear something, we hear it and then do it? And we think we understand it. I understand this talk, but then a minute later I'm doing exactly what I thought I understood. But it's something I am learning, though, to see the uselessness. I don't know why that struck me so hard a couple of talks ago when you said you got to see something as useless. If you see over and over again that letting the pressure off is useless, then you have something to work with on a new level, I think.
That's correct. Debbie's up.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah. I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place just right now.
And what would that be?
Well,
This is good, because why do you think people don't want to come up and talk? What's the rock and the hard place?
I'll tell you. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
There's a pressure in me to check my phone continuously to make sure that my world hasn't fallen apart. And if it has, then I need to shore it all up again. And so that rock and a hard place is constantly pushing me to make sure that everything is still okay, when it's never okay. And like Patricia was just saying, it's not gonna be okay. When I see the futility, I do this. And this is just a small example of how this nature is always, this nature is always trying to straighten things out. And it's just, at this moment, it's just showing up in, you gotta check your phone. You gotta make sure things are the way they should be.
And why is coming up and speaking a rock in a hard place? That's what I was
Oh,
asking.
is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Who can help her?
Well, hang on, maybe I know.
Oh, gee. Well, I'm in a rock in a hard place now.
Coming up to speak
Yeah.
could be a rock in a hard place because you don't want anybody to know that you're caught here.
Caught with what?
In a nature that can't see itself, I suppose. No? No. Okay. All right. Maybe something could help me.
And so like that cute behavior,
Yeah.
that's how you escape.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to come up and talk because I don't want anybody to see that I'm a phony,
Yeah.
that I'm making stuff up or that I'm expressing things that I'm not sure of. So I don't want you to see me, listen to this, as I see myself. I don't want you to see me the way I see myself.
Yeah.
That's a rock in a hard place, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The queue is open if there's anybody in the anybody.
Yeah, we actually have Robert with his hand up, Guy. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute him, and you can speak with Robert. Robert, just a reminder, you'll need to unmute on your end as well. There you go.
Good enough. Can you hear me okay?
All good.
Very good. Well, I'm not sure, but I think Esperat was a contemporary of Rumi. Guy, I appreciate your lit candle. And the point today about rock in a hard place helped me see something, which is that when I'm there, preserve myself, I pivot. And I pivot to avoid allowing that collapse to happen.
Yes,
Seeing what's happening there.
correct.
And so this constant pivoting doesn't allow me to see what I need to see.
Yes, and the constant pivoting releases the extraordinary creative energy that takes place when active and passive forces meet. Because that's the give us this day our daily bread. That's the true energy. That's the true food for another order of being. And when I pivot, or in other words, sublimate, or otherwise run from or try to escape through another desire that gives me a certain sense of pleasure through that energy, I'm actually having something stolen from me. So this is a good observation, Robert, and now you know what to look for. That's the task. Now I have something new to understand and to look for, and then to do all that I can to keep my attention in the place it needs to be. Good man.
All right, I'm going to come on. We actually do not have any other hands up in the queue, and I do not have any written questions. So I want to invite everyone. Now is the time. We're a little bit before 11 o'clock. We have some time for our online audience to jump in and join the discussion and ask Guy questions. Then we'll switch to hearing more from our in-person audience. So you've already set a good example, actually, which is great. I mean, this is
Actually,
tool for
there's three people in the queue here.
You're trying to interrupt me. Okay, go ahead. I see there's someone.
There's three people in the queue here on stage. So as soon as someone raises their hand, if great, if not, great. Roger's on.
Yeah, my name's Roger, and yeah, rock in a hard place, sitting in your chair, like Dana said, and gosh, you know, I don't want people to see me that don't got it all together, that don't have this wonderful thing to say, or, you know, the mind just starts telling you all this stuff, when actually, instead of hiding from that, which has been a specialty of mine for many years, is to come up and just say what you say, and just share it. I had an example this morning. You mentioned the phone. Well, I forgot my phone. 10 minutes away from my house. I'm just like, I don't have time to go back and get it. There's a rock in the hard place. That's how conditioned I am, that I have to have my phone to make sure and check it, like you said, to make sure that my world isn't falling apart. When actually, in that moment, my world, I wasn't even connected to what the real world is.
That's correct.
So, anyway, just coming up here just to, yes, I experience, Roger experienced a lot of things, you know, with just anxiety of this nature, trying to get out and push away these rocks when, like Guy said, just to take a moment and sit with it and burn in that desire to do something that the mind is trying to tell you to do. So that's what I want to work on more.
Yeah. Isn't that the case? I should be this, but I shouldn't be that. I really ought to do here, but I don't think I should. Tony's coming up to the mic. Send me a text, Kate, if anything happens out there in the world.
Good morning, my name is Tony. So just a couple of things. I understand the talk, you know, and because I'm hearing the words and I know what they mean. And so, but I know that I don't quite understand. Tony, this doesn't quite understand the resolution to it. I'm not even sure I'm using the right word, but the getting beyond that rock in a hard place. And I know I can see it a little bit, but I know that's something that's going to take a while to actually experience that and go through this.
Actually, it won't take a while. It mustn't take a while to experience. That's the deception. What is time? Time is the distance between the good I imagine and the evil I want to escape, the person I want to be and the one who I shouldn't be. That's psychological time. And that's the lie. That's the Dodge and the Chevy.
Okay, and I just wanted to say one thing, because I had this experience and I was trying to, as I was trying to understand this talk, I had this experience where often we have to care for my mom, and I've mentioned this in the past. And I, you know, it's my mom, so she's coming over, and you know, there's a certain part of Tony that's like, okay, loving Tony, you know, and then I experienced, I was really paying attention, as I try to do a lot when she comes, and I saw the moments where Tony has tremendous resistance to, you know, certain things. I mean, I have to be there, like, on. There's no, you can't even blink kind of thing. And so I was feeling, you know, all this stuff coming up, and I'm seeing this in myself, and I'm thinking, okay. And I'm trying to do different things to escape this uncomfortableness that I'm feeling, and anger and all of these other things. And
trying to escape the resistance I have to what I've agreed to do.
Yes.
Say
yes, trying to escape the resistance
I have
to
what I've agreed to do.
What I've agreed to do. But I had a little bit of an epiphany, a moment where I stopped. I saw myself, and I just stopped, and I was looking at my mom, and she did this. She looked at me and she went, right? Okay. So I saw in that moment, somehow I experienced her side of this situation. And all of that stuff that I had been sensing was immediately gone. I can't quite explain it, but it was some kind of a change where I wasn't dealing with my resistance to all of this stuff. That all of a sudden I was
Let me help you, Tom.
Thank you.
Sit down. And then I know there were other people wanting to come up, but we've got hands in the queue, so. No, John, yeah. The rock and the hard place is that I want to know what I'm doing is the right thing. Because something is telling me something happened and now it's the right thing. No, me trying to feel like that happened is the right thing isn't good for me. A child's having a tantrum and you show it a piece of chocolate. Suddenly it's not having a tantrum anymore because it's taken from the consciousness that was fighting with the condition that wasn't satisfying whatever desire was, and now it has a new desire. And so the attention flees from what it doesn't want to what it likes, from what is uncomfortable to what comforts it. And in that split second of being comforted, all the resistance is gone. But it isn't gone. It remains in the consciousness that will say, I want to do something and should because it's right, and it is, by the way. And yet I resist and resent the fact that I have to do this consistently. That's a rock and a hard place that exists to that consciousness because we don't know that consciousness. I believe that when I don't want to do something and I'm full of that resistance, all I have is the reasons why I feel that way. So I'm never aware of the opposites at the same time, Tony. I'm not present to them. I'm co-opted by one desire or one not want. To see that and to understand it doesn't go away because mom threw me a kiss is for me to then be a man who sees the kiss, feels the love in it, if there's love in it, appreciates being loved, but doesn't leave the consciousness that will return within a day at least into the same place again. Because if I don't remain with the awareness, then I'm asleep. If I'm asleep, I'll be caught in that rock and a hard place, because that's what spiritual sleep is. On one hand, you ask ridiculous things of yourself. On another hand, you don't ask anything of yourself. On one hand, you want to be Christ-like, which is, in its true meaning, beautiful, because that is sacrifice. That is what is born when these opposites meet. That is the new birth, the revelation and expression of a convergence of heaven and earth, something being born. But we mistake ourselves for being that every time we think to ourselves, well, now I'm Christ-like because now I don't have this in me anymore. The vine gives rise to the branch gives rise to the grapes give rise to the seed gives rise to the vine. Everything, creation, all inclusive, nothing separate. Everything about our life is separated into vine, branch, grape, seed. Everything about our life measured according to the mind that imagines itself being vine, branch, grape, or seed. All the time divided, Tony. Over to you, Kate, and we'll go through our list, which grew.
All right, we have Steve, who is waiting to speak with you, and after that, Debbie, and then I have questions from Susanna and Shoshana. So here's Steve.
And that'll be it for today. Over to you.
Hi, Guy.
Hello, Steve.
I will say that I appreciate these talks more and more because as I hear them, it just seems like it sinks in deeper, and I'm starting to see and put this all together in a sense of negation that you talked about a while ago. And I tell you, the more that I'm starting to see it, the right now, the harder it seems to get with all the stuff that comes up. But I think
yes,
I'm grateful for this because it seems like this is all the stuff being offered up, shown to me,
yes,
so that I can then work with it.
Yes.
But I appreciate all this so much. I can't tell you. It's sinking in on a deeper level, and I'm just grateful for it. And I guess this is the dark night of the soul part, because it's crazy some of the stuff that comes up, and
If we are, as I would suggest, an order of being that is ceaselessly being reborn, and that our true nature is not left or right, up or down, good or bad, but something from out of which those things descend into this plane, then it could be argued pretty well that not only are we meant to have multiple lives in a single lifetime, but that those multiple lives are the result of being reborn, of coming to the end of something fully, and in the end of something fully discovering the beginning of something that was waiting for that ending. And it just goes on like that, to participate in that level. Anyway, good, Steve. Let's go on, Kate.
All right, I'm going to bring in this question from Susanna. I think it's a good moment to do that. So Susanna says, so both masters are wrong, bad, not the answer to our problems? We need to wait for the third option, the celestial solution?
I kind of like that, but let's not say wrong or bad. Both masters are incomplete, and they try to complete themselves. No desire can complete itself other than through another desire. So whatever it is that I want is never going to bring an end to the want. That's what mammon is that Christ talked about. Insatiable appetite, the hungry ghost. Can't do it. But when I'm identified with what it wants to do, for the moment I feel like it's done it. And then the very thing that it's done becomes the hard place when it's challenged by whatever threatens to take away from me my pleasure. And then round and round I go. So it's not that they're bad. We're not judging this consciousness. That's what it would like to do. What we're doing is looking at this consciousness and realize it is a consciousness that is divided. Hence, it is forever trying to complete itself through what it imagines it's missing. And that's all it can do, is imagine what's missing, identify with the desire that will answer it, and then in that identification feel like I've found peace and happiness at last, until the rock comes. Got it? I think you do. I think you're getting it, Susanna. The celestial solution is the light that is born when this tremendous pressure, born of opposites trying to reconcile each other, are allowed to do what they're intended to do, which is to bring a new light into a consciousness that has no light in it, and that can be reformed and transformed by that entrance. On we go.
All right, we're going to go to Debbie in the queue.
Debbie in the queue. Strange last name.
Thanks for that. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking my question. I'm wanting to kind of share an aha around that fear of being seen as I see myself.
Yes.
I recently had an idea to create a community around an aspect of grief and grieving that I've experienced and found there really isn't, our society doesn't really have a good way to deal with that, and especially this particular aspect. And so I thought I can't be the only one that would could benefit from a community with this. But because of my fear of what people might think of me and how it might affect my business, I was trying to think of ways I could be anonymous and maybe create like a character. Although at the same time, I know people will identify better if it's an actual human being, that they're connecting with, and to join the community. And when it was said about fear of being seen how we see ourselves, I realized, I'm letting that fear of how will that affect my business and what will people think of me prevent me from helping other people and creating a community that will help me too. And that's silly. I just need to not worry about it so much.
Well, I guess. Wouldn't it be lovely, Debbie, if I could just go, I'm not going to worry about this anymore. It's impossible. But what is possible is for you to do the good as best you understand it. And to see where it is that something wants to interfere with the good as best you understand it. And then when you are busy doing the good as best you understand it, to see if it is the good that you thought it was. And then let it purify itself. The last thing that human beings understand is that we're not here to purify ourselves. We're here to be purified. And then let that natural celestial purification do its work. Let it cast out by revealing everything in that consciousness, what is conditioned and reprehensible to one's true possibilities. And it will do so. That's the threshing. And the threshing is where we need to stay in a constant place inwardly of recognizing that. And other than that, it's a fool's game to try to figure it out. Do the best you can. Watch. Do the best you can again. On we go.
Well, no matter what we do, there's always going to be someone criticizing anyway, so got to just do the thing.
Oh, yeah, Debbie, but, but Debbie, you know what? So, I mean, you just, look, you somehow, and it will take place if you love the truth, it will not betray you. You have to get to the place where you realize you could have every human being on this planet go, oh my God, there's Jesus in a woman's body, and it wouldn't get rid of your pain. Have everyone love you, and you'll still find, because you live from a nature, that it despises itself, and that it hides the way it despises itself by imagining ways to be loved by others or how to love itself, which is the psychopathic planet's idea of self-love. I don't need to love myself. I need to see a consciousness that doesn't know anything about love and die to it. And love helps me do that. On we go, Kate.
All right, we just have this question from Shoshana. Hello, dear Guy and team. I'm struggling with the enabling I have always invested in for reasons that no longer seem altruistic. I see myself swinging back and forth between apathy and panic, as in both the trapeze artist and trying to hold up both poles. Today has helped me to see the hold of questions tightly inside. How do we stop looking for a net to fully let go?
Anyone that would tell you or try to convince you in any way whatsoever that there is some path you can follow that's going to produce the freedom imagined is a liar and a thief. In the end, everything depends upon what the divine, what God, what love has sown into the soul, that knows without thinking that something waits outside that piece of glass that they bump into. And then if you're honest and true and remain as loyal as you can to that little part of you that recognizes this is something that needs to be let go of. This has to go. This has to die. I cannot remain this kind of human being without judging yourself, not hating yourself, not trying to be something, just seeing with the absolute clarity your actual consciousness. Then in the actual clarity of that consciousness, it is provided for you by the next level of your own consciousness. It lets you see first what you need to stop being, then it brings you into itself when you give up what you can no longer continue being. That's called faith, but the real faith. To walk through that valley of the shadow of death, to go through these times where it is so evident to you, everything's telling you, well, what's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of living? I did this, I gave that, I was supportive here, I dedicated, I did all this, and look what I get for all of my work. And the moment you hear and feel that thought and that voice and that emotion passing through you, you need to understand that, if you want to use the words, the devil himself, evil itself, has appeared inside of you and wants to get you to stop trusting in the fact that you are intended to transcend yourself, but that of yourself you cannot do it. Of yourself you cannot do it. It is a state of being brought completely to the end of something. What happens in the story of the prodigal son? What happens if you know the Bhagavad Gita with Krishna and Arjuna? Here's Arjuna, and he's getting ready to face, he's trying to figure things out, and he runs into this terrible dragon. He doesn't want to do any of this, but he's on this quest. And he knows the dragon's going to kill him, just like you think when you reach this place, it's the end of my life. He knows the dragon's going to kill him. So he begs Arjuna, Krishna, can I go and build an altar and at least say my prayers before I go die? I know I got to do it. And so he designs this wreath, this little red flower thing. I don't know exactly what it was. And he puts it on the altar, and then he picks up his sword to go slay the dragon. And what do you think happens? The dragon's wearing the wreath. But you don't get there until you go meet it. You don't see that they're not separate. That what you're trying to kill is something that, if you would understand it, holds life in it. Rumi, the antidote is in the venom. To understand that. Then you're going to ask questions, you're going to go through this, but one day, with God as my witness, your mind will be full-scale assault. It wants to bring you into a conversation. It wants to get you involved in why this is and what's that and what does this mean. And look, all this for naught. It wants to drag you into the dirt of a dual mind that wants to do nothing but want and not want, and catch you in that and crush you with it. It wants to do that because that's the most definitive sense of self, isn't it? And what did Christ say when the temptation in the desert came? He said, the devil said, hey, you can have this, turn these stones to bread, you can have this, I'll put you on top of the temple, all that. And what did Christ say? By the word, by that which is true, not by what is going to save me, not what I have to do to save myself, not what's going to make me great, not how people are going to see me as great, not how I'm going to see myself as great. No one is good save the Father. And then it doesn't become an ideology. It becomes what you do. It becomes what you are. Signing off, Kate?
No more hands in the queue, no more questions on this end, so it's up to you guys on that end.
Yeah, we have a few speakers. If you want to stay, you can stay and listen to some people share some stuff. Come on up, John. And you can take part in that by observation. Otherwise, I'll see you Wednesday or next Sunday.
Hi, my name is John, and it might sound as though I'm going to be talking about someone else here, but I'm not, because this example so clearly graphically illustrates what John goes through every time he gets something that he doesn't want. So the company that I work for, I started back in June, is going through a lot of changes. It's growing really quickly, and these are necessary changes. It's not a static situation, it's dynamic. Necessary, it's in flux, changes. And a lot of the old veterans that have been there for years and years have quit because it used to be this laid